Hello, everybody. This is Peter and Sylvia. We are back. And if you don't know who we are and why we are back, it's because we are both therapists. We weren't always, but we somehow, midway through our career, decided we wanted to add something to who we are and what we do. And we did our qualifications in our different ways. So these videos that we record are totally unscripted and low tech and just like two people having conversation, which is why we have our individual mugs of coffee and tea. You may see a psychedelic yellow line go down the side of Sylvia's face. Now, that's part of life, and we just have to live with life because at Sylvia's end, there's no end of IT and technology issues, but that shouldn't stop us from having a conversation.
Yep.
And the one we picked today is we stumbled across a new term. Maybe it's not new to you, but we certainly hadn't come across it before and was wondering, what is this all about? It's called chrono working.
Yes.
Working as in working, and chrono as in a watch, a clock.
Mhm.
So I don't know, Sylvia, if you want to have a go at trying to explain what it's supposed to mean.
I think it said the chrono working. Apparently, when I saw it the other day in an article, it said that it was pitched that there's a new trend that organisations need to be aware of. Chrono working. I thought, oh, I haven't heard of that one before. And apparently, it's where it aims to fit work schedules around an individual's circadian rhythm and optimum times of productivity rather than the traditional 9 to 5 model. So I guess it's sort of an evolution from, at the moment, this flexi working, working from home, hybrid working, around people working when it suits them. I think that one of the examples I saw was a lady who's excuse me, who's she claims that her prime optimum productivity is from 11 in the evening to 2 o'clock in the morning. And that's great if that's how, in her view, that's her greatest area of productivity. However, how does that fit or sit if you're in an environment where you have timelines and deadlines to meet that are outside that? So is there then a conflict that you can only then, if I claim that my best productivity, I don't know, 8 in the evening till 12, does that then preclude me from working in an environment where where my main productivity wouldn't work? If for example, payment deadlines are 3 o'clock in the afternoon or LIBOR fixings are 11 o'clock in the morning, how would that work? I think it might be a good idea, but it's somewhat limited in terms of where you work. Years ago, Peter, we've had all the, are we a lark or are we an owl? And now it seems to be a bit of an evolution from that. And apparently it's a healthy trend that workplaces should try to understand and adopt in 2024. I don't know what your views on that are.
I'm confused as to how this is actually going to work.
Yeah.
I totally get the circadian rhythm. We all have our internal clock. And back in the day, I remember we were called A people or B people, depending on whether we were early risers or if we functioned best at night or whatever. When I was a student, by the way, first time around back in Denmark in the 1980s, I kind of got to my best working rhythm and my most alert after 10 o'clock at night. And
Mm-hmm.
I could just carry on throughout the night, but I was absolutely useless at lectures the next morning.
Mm-hmm.
But I kept it through all the way through. But I had to change that when I got into the working world where nobody could give two hoots about my optimum performance time of the day because it was 9 to 5. And I knew that, and somehow I adapted to that, and it works fine. Um, then roll on all the years, and we had the pandemic, which I think has a lot to answer for in terms of people, excuse the pun here, waking up
Yeah.
to see that there is more to life and there are other options than 9 to 5 for certain industries, for certain professions, certainly not for all. But those where it is possible, could we get more from people by allowing them to work when it suits them the best? And flexibility is great when we have happy and content people who are feeling well in themselves, they are more productive and all that good stuff. But there comes a point where we live in a world that we've been building up for so many generations of expectations about when things will happen, when the shops are open, when you're open for business, so that we can plan our lives accordingly. And if all of a sudden we break this down big scale and say, okay, well, this week I'm mostly awake at 3 in the morning, but the person I'm working with is really great at 4 in the afternoon. Now, things will take a bit of time. Just think back to the times where you and I both worked with people in the States or in the Far East, where we almost had to do night shifts sometimes in order to catch them when it was their daytime. It would be the same kind of scenario, I think, if we were to just make it a free-for-all. But of course, why not do what we can where we can and where it makes sense? And the problem I have with these big articles and big headlines is that it suggests that we should now go wholesale in the opposite direction of where we are. When wholesale where we were didn't quite work. So why do we think that a new method is just going to fix everything? We won't.
And it's interesting how, we have this new word, chronoworking. You talk there about, and people are talking about, the future of flexible working, many, many, many years ago, picking up on the point you just said there, advocating flexible working, where people could get up super early in the morning to capture the Asian markets. And then they take the kids to school, and then they go into work, and then to capture the Indian subcontinent, the Middle East markets and European markets as they come on board. They then leave, and then the UK markets, then they leave and go home, pick their kids up from school, get the dinner and things like that, and then go back online to pick up the American markets and the South American markets. Now, that's flexible working. Now, is this chrono working a bit like just renaming what a lot of people already do? I suppose with this chrono working, the advocate there is that the idea is that you work with your body rather than against it. But as you said, sometimes if my best working time is 4 in the afternoon, that's not going to suit other places. So, there is a certain element of what I would call behavior flexibility in all this. If someone says, oh, I'm only going to work this because that's my working hours, how's that going to sit with an employer who wants them to work and their business and their product is in a different time zone? Or, as I said, you've got deadlines to meet. And if my productivity is later on in the day, then it's not going to work. But there seems to be quite a shift at the moment, in my opinion, towards the employees dictating how and when they work. And this might be a bit contentious, but there is an element that sometimes people seem to forget, that it's the employer who does pay the wages and does need the productivity and the performance. So there can be a bit of a mismatch sometimes in what employees want or feel they're entitled to, or working to their circadian rhythm, if it doesn't match the business or the product that they're in. And then you'll end up with a bit of a conflict going on.
And what you just said there reminded me that a lot of these articles and headlines are very one directional. It says somewhere, employers should consider this. And other articles might say, well, employees should consider this. So the chrono working clearly comes from the point of view of the employee. Just demand stuff from the employer. What none of it seems to suggest is, well, why don't we have a conversation, a dialogue about this, to then see what works, so that employer and employee sit down and find out what works and what doesn't. And why does it work? Why can't you have everything that you want? Instead of digging the trenches and just throw things at each other. So I think the idea is great. It's fine. Let's put it on the table amongst all the other great ideas, and then pick up the ones that actually work in the environment where you are, instead of saying this is now a new blanket thing that all employers are bad people because they haven't considered that all the employees, no matter what they do, can just go and work when they can.
Mm.
There might not be many night shifts in warehouses and factories, or there might be too many of them, and nobody in the day. Who knows? You can't. We have got ourselves into a situation where we have put up some structures, and we can't just unilaterally go and break those down. We have to look at what we do in the context of where we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah, I'm all for, having a bit more flexibility. The days of the 9 to 5. I know throughout my sort of financial career, I don't think I ever did 9 to 5. It was always, a bit earlier in the morning and very much later in the afternoon. And I'm all for having a bit more flexibility, but there has to be some sort of starting structure. Otherwise, it could be, just, for want of a better phrase, quite a mess. So we have to have somewhere, to say, 9 to 5. However, what people could do is this, and this. But let's just remember that, businesses have businesses to run. They have deadlines to meet. And this idea, whilst it may suit some people, might not suit someone else. And also, I'm just wondering about this working with your circadian rhythm. Is it a circadian rhythm that we are born with, that's inherent, that's always there? Or does it adjust to the demands? For example, I've always worked early morning to late at night, and I was super productive. Now, is that my circadian rhythm? Did it just happen to match? Or did my productivity match what was the demands of me? So that's another interesting concept.
I don't know what to say to that argument, because I totally get it. Who actually is totally aware of their circadian rhythm?
I'm not.
I can't confess to being either. Yes, some days I'm really lethargic in the afternoon, and other days I am not. So I think there's more to it than meets the eye.
Yes.
And as I said earlier, it's an idea. We shouldn't reject an idea just because it seems a little bit off the wall or left field, whatever the right expression is. But we should give it some consideration and find out how viable is it. Does it sound good on paper, or does it actually work in practice? And
interesting to hear what other people think about that. And do they know what their circadian rhythm is? Do they know when they're most productive, or we're just productive because stuff happens and we respond to it? It'd be interesting, an interesting concept. All these new wordings that come along.
So why don't we hand over to you watching this and ask you to tell us what your circadian rhythm is. If you know you have one, did you ever know that the term existed? And what do you think about chronoworking? Would it be for you? Would it absolutely work or not? So thank you for staying with us, and see you in the next video. Take care.
See you later. Bye-bye.